Yes, that's right. We're lowering your blood pressure one point at a time. This is the Dr. Anonymous Show live on Blog Talk Radio. And on the line we have with us right now Dr. Lucy Hornstein, family doctor. Hey, welcome to the show there, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Dr. A. It's great to be here. I feel like I'm finally one of the cool kids.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. So, but before I start with my first question here, so today was Match Day. You have any memories and thoughts on Match Day when you found out where you were going for residency?
Well, I matched the first choice place that I wanted, which was same town, Philadelphia suburbs, where I was in medical school in Philadelphia. But what was actually at least as important and just as uncertain and just as gratifying is because of the results of the match, I was also approved for a mortgage for my first house.
Wow.
For buying the house that I still live in. So I got both the hospital I wanted and I got the mortgage.
Wow.
And
geez.
what startles the heck out of me too is that I just got stuff in the mail. This, actually in about 6 weeks, will be my 25th med school reunion.
Wow, man.
So, now, aside from the fact that my medical school doesn't actually exist anymore, it merged and morphed, and now it's the university that has essentially taken over the facilities and the name and the alumni roster. So I'm not actually technically a Drexel alum, but Drexel likes to think that I am. So it's 25 years since I've been back down to Philly. They actually built a beautiful building for the med school as opposed to the old actually nurses' residence that had been converted into lecture halls and stuff that I actually went to. So I think I'll pop down there since I'm still local in about a month and see what everyone is up to. But 25 years just makes me feel old.
So what was your med school called then? What was your school called?
It was, well, at the time it was called Medical College of Pennsylvania. However, it had gone through several name changes. It was originally founded in 1850 as the Female Medical College of Pennsylvania, and then it became better known as Women's Medical. And in 1972, it began admitting men, and in 1974, it changed its name from Women's Medical to Medical College of Pennsylvania. It was still, put it this way, so this was the early 1980s. If you had a really old person in the hospital and you asked them where they were, what's your name? Do you know your name? Do you know where you are? Do you know the date? When you said, do you know where you are? If they said Women's Medical, it counted.
So that counted as that's
as
right.
Oriented. Yeah,
that's right.
That part meant they knew where they were.
You're not confused at all.
Right.
Well, as I start with as I ask all my guests, a very very hard softball question to start out with. So family medicine, family physician, family doctor. So what kind of
totally foreign to you, I know.
what drew you towards family medicine as a specialty?
You know something? The God's honest truth is, at this point, I don't even remember, because I decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was in third grade.
Wow.
And I actually have documentation of that too. I've got a report card from third grade where the third grade teacher says, I hope her dream to study medicine comes true. And so I read all different kinds of, various things, and I liked everything and didn't want to be limited to one thing, which of course, as you know, is the hallmark of family practice. So I think I can honestly say that certainly by the time I was in high school, I may not have known, the terminology, but the basic outlines of what I wanted to do were already pretty clear. And it's kind of funny. I've heard since then that my parents were great. They never said, "Oh, you'll change your mind," but they also were. But they were prepared. If I did, they weren't. If I had changed my mind, they wouldn't have tried to say, "Oh, remember, didn't you want to be a doctor?" And they would never have done anything like that. But I think my mother was a little surprised that I just never got around to changing my mind. So, and I really do have to admit that I can't imagine doing anything else. I know other people do are in other kinds of professions and they like it and all that. And at some level, I just don't quite understand how anyone can do anything but what I do. And I guess I mainly take that as a sign that I am in exactly the right career, the right setting. I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which is surprisingly uncommon, actually.
Oh, of course. Did you have mentors or influences as you grew up? Is there anybody in your family in medicine at all? Or I'm just kind of curious on a little bit more of the background of it.
Not really. I mean, yes, there are, certainly, in any good Jewish family, certainly there were relatives who were doctors, but no one I had constant, any significant contact with. I think looking back, it's really just my parents were like, of course, anything you want to do, of course you can do it. There was never any doubt that which to look back on it, I guess means that the encouragement was so pervasive as to be implicit. It's, well, of course you can do whatever you want to do, which is actually pretty cool.
And I actually heard you in another interview, as all of us family docs as we go through medical school, we try to get convinced to go other ways. Hearing phrases like, "Oh, you're too smart to go into family medicine," or "You should really you should really pick something else." But what kind of ribbings did you get when you were in med school?
Had a geriatrics professor who said to me, "What are you going into? First day of the rotation, what are you going into?" I said, "Family practice." And very nicely, very earnestly, he said, "I'd like the chance to talk you out of it." And I smiled and said, "Don't bother." It was, then again, I have to admit, though, in that era and in that time and place, women's medical, or there were still about 60% women in that medical school, which was at the time by far the greatest proportion of women, and it was so it was the kind of place where primary care wasn't going to necessarily be as devalued as perhaps in a more highly, quote unquote academic kind of a place. So it wasn't quite as bad as it could have been.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I also, one of the things too, if there are any medical students listening, one of the things I specifically looked for in a residency program was a program where there were no other residents, because I feared being a sort of a second-class citizen in a hospital where there were, other residents to fight over cases. I was afraid of getting the leavings. So instead, there was a community hospital, just the one residency program, and we basically had the run of the place, which was great.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to a program like that where we just kind of ruled the hospital, and we did everything. We saw the good cases. We took care of our ICU patients. We did all of our deliveries, and we had a great relationship with all of our specialists in the hospital. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot. Obviously we went to some outside hospitals for some other rotations, but basically when we were on call for our hospital, we did it all. So I'm definitely with you, and I definitely understand what you're talking about. The learning was so much more, not being third or fourth intern or resident in line.
Very much so. On the other hand, so I started out solo family practice, and I did quite well for the first 10 years or so. It's a little freaky to actually come out and say I've been doing this for 20 years. But